Buenas tardes. Muchísimas gracias.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, President of the Community of Madrid, for this distinction.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much for your way of being. Thank you very much to all of you who are here present.
Es para mí un verdadero honor recibir esta condecoración.
It is a real honor for me to receive this decoration and, as the President pointed out, in a certain sense I have said it in other speeches.
En algún sentido lo he dicho en otros discursos, nosotros venimos del futuro.
We come from the future to tell you a story that is desirable to avoid. It is the story of the damage and decadence caused by socialism. Argentina, at the end of the 19th century, was the richest country in the world. Today, after more than 100 years of impoverishing socialism and violent populism, Argentina, at the official exchange rate, fell to 140 in the parallel world ranking. We received the country in that situation, with more than 13 years of falling GDP per capita. More than 50% of the population being poor in a scandalous situation, where a country that produces food for 400 million human beings, where the tax pressure on the food-producing sector is 70%. That is, the state keeps the food of 280 million human beings. There are nearly 5 million Argentines who do not have enough to eat. This catastrophe is the virtue of socialism, generating poverty. That is why I want to tell you about it and warn you about the risks and how this model works, because it is not necessary to have to reach such an extreme situation as the one that reached Argentina. It would be good to avoid all that pain. In particular, I was coming here and I am seeing Madrid, and it is so beautiful. Do not let socialism ruin your life is the motto. And the point is, when we started the electoral race, already in the first stage, when I was going for a seat in the Buenos Aires city legislature, we were already talking about what the caste model was. The caste model basically starts from a socialist premise that says that where there is a need, a right is born. Now, that definition has a problem. The first is that needs are infinite, and the issue is that someone has to pay for rights and resources are finite. Therefore, that inconsistency, that conflict between infinite needs and finite resources, requires a solution. Those of us who believe in the ideas of freedom, in free enterprise capitalism, where we consider the market to be a mechanism of social cooperation, where property rights are voluntarily exchanged, consider that the price system does that work, and there is nothing better that can solve what the price system solves, which has probably been one of the greatest human inventions in the history of humanity. However, socialists do not believe in that. They believe in a horrible and impoverishing monster called social justice, a truly aberrant idea. Hayek spoke of something he called weasel words. Every time you put an adjective to something, you destroyed the original meaning of the word, in this case, social justice. The truth is that social justice is profoundly unjust and profoundly violent. Because social justice first violates equality before the law, because it takes from some and gives to others, and that is preceded by theft, because taxes are not paid voluntarily. They are paid at gunpoint in exchange for the fact that if you don't pay them, you go to jail. So, it is preceded by theft and unequal treatment before the law. Therefore, social justice is never fair, it is profoundly unfair. In addition, they often raise noble issues, but discretion always plays a dirty trick, there are always leaks. Bastiat spoke of the porous hands of politicians. Maybe it is not the politician's intention directly. Maybe it is that of a brother, a partner or whatever. Whoever wants to understand, let them understand. In that sense, what happens is that this intention is manifested in an increase in public spending, in an increase in the fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit has to be financed, always financed. You have different ways of financing the fiscal deficit. The way that the most heartless, most populist, most savage, and most deceitful politician uses is debt. Debt is an absolutely immoral way of dealing with the situation, because debt is nothing more or less than future taxes. So, it means that the party of the present is being paid for by the work of people in the future, people who do not vote, people who were not even born. In other words, it is profoundly immoral. They are financing the party of the populist politician today in exchange for the effort of generations who cannot even vote at the polls. Furthermore, it is not free either, because when you resort to borrowing in a pronounced manner, that has implications on the interest rates that are paid. When higher interest rates are paid because the Treasury's economy is becoming more risky, there is a clearly negative counterpart, less investment, a lower level of capitalization and, therefore, lower real wages and worse living standards. In other words, it ends up being a brake on economic growth. When this situation gets out of hand, it also generates stagnation and decline. Not in vain did Argentina use this tool and become the biggest defaulter in modern history, something that we, from our government, are changing. We basically inherited a fiscal deficit of 15% of GDP, where 5 points were from the Treasury and 10 from the central bank. Against all predictions that making such a large-scale adjustment was impossible, we have done it in less than 6 months. In less than 6 months we not only achieved financial equilibrium in the Treasury, but we have practically finished the quasi-fiscal deficit in the central bank. In other words, we made an adjustment of 15 points of GDP in 5 months. It is the strongest adjustment in the history of humanity. And that allowed us to begin to slow down inflation because we no longer need to finance the deficit by issuing money. Inflation, when we took office, was running at a rate of 17,000% per year. Wholesale inflation was 54% per month, which, when annualized, was 17,000%. At the last observation, it was 3.5%, that is, the equivalent of 50% per year. It is still an aberrant and horrible number. But compared to the 17,000% they left us, it is much less and it is an enormous achievement. Not only that, but another mechanism that politicians use when they are left without financing via debt is to use money issuance. Argentina, since it created its central bank in 1935, removed 13 zeros from the currency. We could remove 3 more zeros. Argentina had 2 hyperinflations without war. Argentina chronically suffers from an inflation problem, and that is also important to keep in mind, because one of the most harmful influences left by Keynesianism is to believe that inflation depends on anything but the issuance of money. That is to say, if you were to visit Argentina, you would find a lot of economists saying that inflation has multiple causes. And the reality is that the only cause of inflation is the issuance of money. When you generate an excess supply of money, either because you issue money or because the demand for money falls, both things happen at the same time. That causes the currency to lose its purchasing power and all prices that are in monetary units to rise. In fact, we have undertaken this by cutting off the financing of the Treasury. We do not issue more for the fiscal sector, and we also sterilize the purchase of foreign currency through another window. We still have some issues pending resolution with remunerated liabilities. But in principle, we are on the way to a situation of zero issuance to definitively end inflation. In fact, when we have the central bank completely sanitized, from that moment on we will send a law where issuing money is a crime, and that crime is a crime against humanity. And if money is issued, the President of the nation, the Minister of Economy, the President of the Central Bank, all of its board, and deputies and senators who approve these measures will go to jail. And since it will be a crime against humanity, automatically, if another government comes and changes these laws, some liberal will always come back and put them in jail. So, we are also going to definitively end inflation in Argentina. We are ending the fiscal deficit, the quasi-fiscal deficit, and we are ending inflation. And the fruits are being seen. Because after having gone through the worst moment during the last quarter of the year, today we are beginning to see better activity indicators that show improvements. The diffusion indexes already exceed 50%, that is, the number of sectors that are expanding already exceeds 50%, and the leading indicators have been showing positive records for more than 2 months. In short, it can be done. The other mechanism that politicians use is to raise taxes. And when you raise taxes, in essence it is nothing more or less than expropriation. In essence, what you are doing is killing economic growth. You are violating the right to property. And if you violate the right to property, there are no incentives to save. There are no incentives to invest, and, therefore, the economy stagnates. All these aberrations in Argentina, we have suffered for more than 100 years. And they have generated this tremendous decline as rarely seen in the history of humanity.
Pero afortunadamente los argentinos despertaron.
But fortunately, the Argentines woke up. They woke up to the ideas of freedom. They woke up and understood that we can no longer get out with populism. We can get out with responsibility. We can get out with capitalism, savings and hard work, Professor Enzo Bastos would say. The way out is liberalism. That is why we, and this was very surprising to me when we were doing our campaign events, we closed with a phrase from our greatest exponent of the ideas of freedom, Professor Alberto Venegas Lynch Jr., who says that liberalism is respect and respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression and in defense of the right to life. Liberty and property, whose institutions are private property, free markets, non-state intervention, division of labor, social cooperation, and where one can only be successful by serving others with goods of better quality and better price. That is to say, where the real heroes are the businessmen and entrepreneurs. Not the bureaucrats who persecute us, who persecute the press, who lie, who steal, and who, in the end, destroy a country, and above all,
el tejido
cause much
social.
more complicated damage that deteriorates the social fabric because socialism is based on envy, hatred, resentment, and unequal treatment before the law. If necessary, they have no problem resorting to murder, because where socialism was applied in a pure manner, it was a failure in economic, cultural, and social terms. And never forget that more than 100 million human beings were murdered. Therefore, it is always a pleasure for me to come to Spain. It is very pleasant to visit great friends. Today I have the opportunity to be with Isabel, whom I appreciate and admire so much. I admire her for her enormous battle, for those wonderful speeches, which I do not miss the opportunity to see on YouTube. That is why I say that I am so happy here. But, above all, to warn you of the risk you face. Because, in addition, when socialism comes into play, to penetrate the logic of Hayek's road to serfdom, every time an intervention is made, the functioning is worse. And, therefore, that leads to more intervention. To conclude, I want to tell you two phrases, one from Mises and one from Hayek. Mises' phrase says that knowledge in economics leads to liberalism. And a phrase from Hayek that says that if socialists understood economics, they would not be socialists. Well, it seems that one of the exceptions you make to the rule is with Mr. Sanchez, who evidently, despite having been in economics, did not understand or likes the state very much to take down the Spaniards. But I have hope that they are awakening, as they did in Argentina. I remember that, when I started the campaign, at the end I said that I did not come to guide lambs, I came to wake up lions. And it seems that this roar, from a remote place in South America, has begun to reach the whole world. It has already taught Europe a lesson recently, and we believe that the ideas of freedom, which are the only ones that bring prosperity, will return to the world. Thank you very much.